Hello, I am going to talk about E, or the Euler number, or Euler constant, which is about equal to 2.718. I say about equal because just like pi, E is irrational, so it can't be written as a fraction of two integers. And when you write its decimal approximation, the decimal goes on forever and never repeats. It's named after a Swiss mathematician named Euler. It's his last name, Euler, pronounced Euler, and was first discovered by one of the Bernoullis. Um, he was studying compound interest and came across this number naturally when he was compounding more and more frequently. So if you have interest compounded annually once a year, or twice a year, or 4 times a year quarterly, or monthly 12 times a year, or daily, or even twice a day, 6 times a day, 100 times a day, he realized that you got down to a number. If you could compound interest continuously or constantly, you got the number 2.718 as your return. So he expressed this in the form of a limit. For compound interest, we have the equation parenthesis 1 plus 1 over n close parenthesis to the n power helps us compute our compounding factor. And if n is allowed to go to infinity, you get e. It's also found in 1 over n factorial. If you add up all the 0 and all the positive integers up to infinity, if you make a sum of that, you get the same number. So what do I mean? Factorial, that exclamation point, is where you take an integer and multiply it by all the other smaller positive integers. So if we did 5 factorial, you would do 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. That total is what 5 factorial is. So if we start with 0, 0 factorial is actually 1, and we do 1 over 1, we get 1. Then if we do put 1 in for n, we get 1 over 1 and get 1 again. So 1 plus 1 is 2. All the rest of them add together give us that decimal part, the 718. So 1 over 2 factorial is a half. 1 over 3 factorial is a sixth. 1 over 4 factorial is 1 over 24, and so on. If you add all those up forever to infinity, you get E. One other place where E comes up to be a really significant, cool number that is part of nature is in calculus. If we look at the function y equals e raised to the x power, you get that nice exponential curve. In calculus, there's a concept called the derivative, which means anywhere along that point, what's the slope? If we drew a line through that point that didn't touch the curve at all, what's the slope of that line? The rise over the run. And as you travel along the curve, the slope gets steeper and steeper and steeper. That line that touches the curve in one point gets steeper and steeper. And if you measure the slope of that line, it's the y value at that point. So if we go to the point 1 comma e, that would be a point on the graph, the slope of that line is e. If we go to the point 2 comma 2 to the e to the second power, e squared, the slope at that point is e squared. The slope is the y value at any point along that curve. It's as far as I know, the only non-trivial example where that happens. So again, e is like pi. It's a natural number that we've discovered, and we found it in lots of different other places. Those are just the ones that are my favorite to talk about. I have a challenge for you. I want you to think about your number. So for me, it would be K, because my last name is Cuscu. So what would K represent? If I could have K be some sort of discovered natural number, what would it be? What is the constant K? So for you, what is your constant? If you got to name something after yourself, what would it be?